Hey, what's going on? John Ellison here on day 4 of my 30-day book challenge as I explore the edges of a symbiotic future, looking at the people and ideas that can bring our human systems into alignment with the planet and the world around us. I started my day by diving into this book called Restoring the Kinship Worldview by Four Arrows and Darcia Narvaez. This is a compilation of 28 excerpts from Indigenous writers from around the world that define what they call the core Indigenous precepts. This is laid out initially in a grid or a chart that basically defines some of the core concepts or ideas, the Indigenous way of thinking compared to the common Western dominant worldview. And funnily enough, yesterday I had actually begun blocking out a similar chart that referenced the Western colonial mind and the Anthropocene alongside the Kinship Worldview and the Symbiocene. And there's quite really stark contrast here between these different aspects. The common and dominant worldview manifestations can be categorized as rigid hierarchies, fear-based thoughts and behaviors, living without strong social purpose, focus on self and personal gain, rigid and discriminatory gender stereotypes, materialistic, earth as an unloving it, more head than heart, competition to feel superior, minimal empathy, humility, and gratitude, and finally, anthropocentric. Now, these common Indigenous worldview manifestations feel these: non-hierarchical, courage and fearless trust in the universe, socially purposeful life, emphasis on community welfare, respect for various gender roles and fluidity, non-materialistic, earth and all systems as living and loving, emphasis on heart over head, competition to develop positive potential, strong emphasis on empathy, humility, and gratitude, animistic and biocentric, words as sacred, truthfulness as essential. This opening framing then begins to be elucidated where each of these statements are effectively illustrated by a short passage and a story from an Indigenous teacher. And then the two authors have a dialogue about these short passages. So these wonderful illustrations and many of these. And it began to open up a door for me, which feels like a kind of lifelong remembering of what it means to be human as a first people. To peel back this Eurocentric view of self and the world around us, and to come into closer contact with who we are as a part of nature, and to remember that we are all relations. Everything from the way that we raise children, to the way that we educate our youth, to the way that we deal with conflict, to the way that we perceive ourselves in context of other people. Every single thing that emerges is effectively a representation of this underlying idea that people are separate from the planet and that Earth itself is not alive, it is inert, and effectively life doesn't matter. In contrast, this idea that the Indigenous wisdom traditions hold is that we are a part of nature. We are an element in this intricate web of life. We are all relations, and life itself is sacred. And holding these two kind of polar opposite ideas in contrast began to really pull out this understanding that I myself have to go on a multi-decade journey to better understand and to immerse myself in Indigenous knowledge systems, these oral traditions, these ways of being, these ceremonies. And I think that this really is possibly the only living testimony to human civilization that has understood how to live in balance with nature. And if we want to have any hope of building a symbiotic future, we have to let go of our Eurocentric, anthropocentric worldview and to understand ourselves as a part of nature. And we have incredible, incredible teachers and Indigenous leaders, Indigenous communities, and in our non-human relations, all of the animal and life forms that are all around us. And so I spent basically all day reading this and was really, really struck by this calling to go sit in ceremony and to immerse myself in these traditions, in these worldviews, and to witness how Indigenous communities raise their children, how they relate, how they communicate to more than human beings, and how they celebrate life together, how they pass on oral traditions. And even for me, I was curious and called to actually begin learning one of these languages that is verb-centric, that sees all of life as a living being, and reflects this animistic worldview that life itself is sacred and that the world around us is alive, and we can communicate to these beings in different ways and listen to the way that they speak, and that they're here to tell us how to live in balance. I got to sit with this evening over the weekend. There's so much to write. There's so much to witness here. But I really felt, I think, grateful to come home to this massive text, this compilation of 28 different stories, and feel like there's a pathway here, a regenerative pathway. I've been spending a lot of time taking online courses, reading, exploring, and for whatever reason, I don't really feel like much of the modern climate community has any fucking clue of what to do or how to address this crisis. But I do feel like this kinship worldview holds the keys to prosperity for all living beings. And it's a completely different way of seeing and moving in the world. And I feel like I've only just touched the surface of this. And I'm super excited to dive deep, to learn, to unlearn, and to develop a new sense of self in this new story of what it means to be human in the age of climate change, biodiversity collapse, and reckoning who we are. So thanks for tuning in on day 4. More of this to come for sure. Got 26 more days ahead of me as I explore visions of a new earth under this framing of the Symbiocene. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you on the other side.